Aloha. My name is Joe with Hawaii Lux Homes here on the island of Oahu. And today we're going to talk about the buyer's representation contract or buyer's representation agreement, which is something that all buyers have to sign prior to purchasing a home in the United States. So here we have the buyer's representation agreement. As of August of 2024, after the National Association of Realtors settlement, all buyers have to sign this agreement prior to even being shown a house by an agent. This was done with the intention of protecting buyers. In my opinion, sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. So we're just going to go over this really quick so you can see as a buyer how it can protect you and how you need to really look out for some things for yourself. So this is going to be the one that we see here in Hawaii. This is put out by the Hawaiian Association of Realtors. The contract is always going to be between the buyer's brokerage firm. For me, this is eXp Realty. This could be whatever brokerage firm the agent that you're working with is under. And you, the buyer, will be here. It's going to go over the things that are agency, what exactly is agency, definition of seller's agent, buyer's agent, dual agent. Dual agency is legal here in Hawaii. Sometimes in other states, it's not legal. We're going to come down here to the appointment of exclusive agent. So this is basically going to say where this agent is going to work for you, in what capacity. Typically, what I do here, it's basically any real estate, and I do all Hawaiian Islands. Sometimes if I'm just showing a client a single property, I'll just do any real estate. I'll mark this other here and I'll sign off on just that single property's address. Term of agreement. So this is really important because now, after the settlement, before I even show somebody an open house for the first time, we have to sign one of these papers. And a lot of times, I might be meeting somebody for the very first time, or we're kind of just getting to know each other. And so, personally, I don't want to have to lock somebody in for, a year, 5 months, whatever it is, before we really, get to know each other and are sure that, we're a good fit for each other. So how I start off this is I'll typically start with 1 to 2 weeks and I have the buyer sign just for that short period of time. It's kind of like an introductory period where we're getting to know each other. They can see how I work. And then after those 1 to 2 weeks are finished, when they decide that they really want to work with me, that's when we then sign a longer one. So just something to look at when you're signing a buyer's representation agreement with a new agent that you may not know. Ask them about signing a shorter term. Ask them if we could have a getting to know each other period to have that shorter um, term of agreement, because sometimes agents will just have you sign a 1 year and then you're locked into that agreement for a year. You have to work with that agent for that time period because you've signed this binding document with them. So just keep that in mind and how to protect yourself. Dual agency then is covered here, what the buyer's brokerage firm's obligations are, what the buyer's obligations are. This is really important as well. It basically says that if for some reason the sellers are offering, 2%, but you signed for 2.5%, that you are obligated to pay that additional 0.5%. I have ways, then I'm going to explain a little bit later, to make sure that you aren't responsible for that 0.5%. And it's something that's really important nowadays because realtors don't know how much sellers are offering in terms of compensation. So we'll touch on that in another few seconds. Then we come down here to the non-discrimination, Megan's law in terms of sex offenders, mediation and arbitration. And here's a really important part. Broker commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. This is really important. Don't allow your agent to tell you that this is what it is. You're allowed to negotiate with them. They may say, this is what I work for. and that's totally okay as well. Just so you know, you have the ability to negotiate. Here we come to the compensation. So this is a really important part. All these 10, 11, and 12 on the Hawaiian Association of Realtors Buyer Representation Agreement. So here's where we talk about compensation. This is going to be essentially what the buyer's agent is going to be paid in terms of commission. So this could be, 2%, 2.5%, 3%, 3.5%. It could be various wide range of numbers depending on what you negotiate. Could include the GET. It could say without the GET. GET is the tax on top of it. And then here it says within how many days of the termination of this contract that you'd still be responsible for that. These are really important parts. For me, what I do, I have this total compensation. I write it up for myself, usually at around 3% plus GET. That way, I'm covered. If the sellers are offering 3%, I can get that whole 3%. If the sellers are offering 2.5%, I can get that 2.5%. But if I sign for 2% and the sellers are offering 2.5%, then I'm missing out on that additional funding for myself. And how I protect you for that. So let's say that we're signed for 3% plus GET, but the sellers are only offering 2.5%. That means we have a 0.5% difference. If I don't write in certain things during these special terms, then you would be required to pay me that additional 0.5%. What I do is I have special terms that I write into here that allow us to renegotiate this total compensation after the fact. We legally have to have a compensation in here when we first start, but I have special terms that we've specifically developed. They're completely legal, run through all of these things that allow us to then renegotiate. So that way, my buyers are always covered. And unless something goes totally bonkers and the sellers aren't offering compensation, then my buyers don't have to be paying any additional compensation to me. The sellers are going to be the ones that are paying my commission. So if you want more information on this, send me, an email, shoot me a text, send me a DM on these special terms and how I can help protect you in these buyer's representation agreements. So that's what we have for today. Just a quick rundown on a buyer's representation contract here in Hawaii. Aloha.